All of it? 250 each way. 250 each way. No. Have you thought about this decision very carefully? They've never had it so good in so many regards. Best odds guaranteed, minimal margins, even money each or two in rugby games. On the handicaps, they have never had a better deal, but yet they still complain about the service that bookmakers give them. It surprises me year in, year out at almost the skill of on-course bookmakers even to stay in business. The volume of business, the number of bets, the size of the wagers that they're taking is decreasing year on year. I mean, one very good colleague of mine who bets up at York and has got excellent pitches say that year on year he's down 30% year on year in terms of how much he's taking in terms of bets. And and I see significant, powerful betting positions at York, and I look at their books, which they're quite happy to show me, of course. And at big meetings like the Evil meeting and everything like that, the amount of money they're taking is pathetic. But yet they seem to be able to turn a profit, to make a business out of it. And in that regard, you have to applaud their activities. But the long-term prognosis for on-course bookmakers over the next 10 years is exceptionally poor.
Yes, Doc. We'll do £2.50 each way on the line.
Anyone else? Winner each week here. Hello, sir.
In 10 years' time, the racetracks will have taken over the betting. What on-course bookmakers cannot get their heads around is the fact that they do not have to offer an exchange price. It really isn't about betting next, the same price as Betfair. It's a complete myth that you need to bet that way. They seem they're obsessed with following betting exchanges and with an attitude that it's got to be all about price, and as far as the customer's concerned, that's all they're interested in, when in actual fact what most customers are interested in life, and I know a lot of people would empathise with me on this matter, is entertainment, is about value, is about choice, is about the old racetrack. Of course, you would see tic-tacs and you would see different prices represented on different boards. It's not uncommon these days. In fact, it is common to see a row of 8, 9, 10 bookmakers with the same price about the favourite. I mean, how is that in any way attractive? How is that supposed to make a customer walk into the betting ring and think that he's being anything other than ripped off? And that's the way they view it. They actually view it that they're being ripped off, even though they're getting the best price. The 16 to 21 runner handicaps, bookmakers have argued that they should be allowed to bet to a fifth, even though for decades punters have accepted those 16 to 21 runner handicaps should be a quarter of the odds. Now, what bookmakers on course don't seem to understand is that it is mentally impossible for the customer to work out whether he's getting a better deal at 7 to 1 to a quarter as opposed to 13 to 2 to, sorry, the other way around, 7 to 1 to a fifth as opposed to 13 to 2 to a quarter. They can't work that out until sometime after they've looked at a betting ticket or they've come up to get their place money, and they describe the experience as being ripped off. They're unhappy about it. Now, I've heard, esteemed colleagues like Barry Dennis basically turn around and said, well, if I put up 7 to 1 to a fifth and next door 7 to 1 to a quarter, I don't see any less traffic in the number of bets I take. And he is absolutely right in that, in terms of that particular argument, because I have bet many times extra places, a quarter of the odds, and bet next door to a bookmaker going a fifth of the odds, for example, and only 4 places. I've done it at Goodwood and Stewards Cup and races like that. I do not see any appreciable increase in traffic. That's because people don't understand it until after the race, of course. They don't understand it, and punters fail to support the bookmakers who offer the best place terms. They are still fairly myopic about the fact if it's 7 to 1 with one bookmaker and 13 to 2 with another, they'll take that 7 to 1, even if afterwards they then discover that their place terms are not as good, and then they want to complain about it. So the bookmakers are at fault in not respecting, in creating an environment where punters feel ripped off. So they are definitely in the wrong. But equally, the punters are in the wrong because you continue to support them. And where you continue to support a business in inferior terms, then you've got to be culpable.
And then come back for the spring.
See you later.
And the spring campaign might entail what have you allowed yourself to dream about at this stage?
In that article you wrote, value seekers, you mentioned. I guess that's me, amongst others.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with value seeking? What's wrong with us punters seeking value?
Because there is no long-term future. There is short-term-itis. There is no long-term future. I hear punters turn around and say, I can't get a fair bet. I don't get what I want. But then they turn around to me and say, well, Geoff, I'll only give you a bet if you're equal to or better than the best price available, including Betfair. And then I will give you a bet on the football, on the tennis, on the cricket and all the rest of it. And expect me to be loyal back to them, to give them the very best. So I'm basically to accept them only as customers when we are basically the top rate. The rest of the time, they will go a bet with Betfair, a bet with Ladbrokes, a bet with Bet365, a bet with Corals. And they give no loyalty to the bookmaker whatsoever, and so they expect the bookmaker to treat them as a long-term customer. Well, that's no longer the case. Basically, with a click of the mouse, you can move around from one bookmaker to the next. So you're creating an environment for the bookmakers whereby they are only laying top-of-the-market products, and when they do that, only laying top-of-the-market products at minimal margin, of course you're going to get restrictions. It's in the same handbook. And best odds guaranteed, which is one of the worst inventions for bookmakers and punters alike. Anybody that runs around value seeking, looking for best odds guaranteed, ultimately ends up very quickly being restricted.
But a year ago we sat here and I asked you about that, and you'd given in. You'd started doing best odds guaranteed, I think.
One has to compete. That doesn't mean to say that I think it's right.
Are you still?
No, we still offer best odds guaranteed, but we don't do anything. For example, any best odds guaranteed before, say, midday in the day. So our morning prices, there still is the element of gamble for punters who come on. If they take my 5 to 4 and it goes to 2 to 1 in the afternoon, well, that's just too bad. You took that gamble, you took that price. It's a traditional bet. It's the way it always used to be. Now, these days, companies like Bet365, the market leader, are saying you can take our 5 to 4, and if it goes to 2 to 1, we'll pay you the 2 to 1. I mean, the whole situation is a complete nonsense. Accepting that Bet365 is an ultra successful business, but they are embarked on a project to blow everybody else out of the water. And the long-term future for the punters, when it's all governed by 1 or 2 betting supermarkets, because that's what's going to happen with Betfair and Paddy Power gambling, banging together. You've got Corals and Ladbrokes together, and you've got Bet365 standing as the market leader, taking the most amount of money. Then you will have less choice, less value for your pound. You will have a worse betting and customer experience because of the way that you're behaving right now. You don't support any traditional values, you just support the best price and only the best price, and so the supermarket mentality will become prevalent, and it's not a good future for punters.
By Harry Scott. Waterloo Warrior next, number 12. Have a bet.
You will end up with super Goliaths in the betting environment, and they will totally dominate the market. Once you end up only with that situation, then they will inevitably cooperate with each other on price and everything else like that. There will be, you will have you have a cartel type situation in place. It is not, there's no more choice in the market. There's no competition for them in the marketplace. They're very, very dominant now, and they're putting people out of business. But I foresee regulation with FOBTs, for example, coming in. We'll see the end of some notable names in the high street. You will see the end of them. When regulation comes into control FOBTs, control, online advertising, tele advertising, as indeed they should,
Yes.
you will see some big high street names disappear. And when I used to go racing with my father, the Cheltenham Festival was the absolute be-all and end-all. But in terms like choice and variety has disappeared out of the Cheltenham Festival. It's all principally dominated by one stable, and indeed one owner who has a fantastic amount of money that he's prepared to pay on
name
his
names.
horses.
Name names.
Rich Ritchie. And I watched Rich Ritchie, for example, on ATR. Very engaging chap. Made millions out of our money, by the way, Rich Ritchie, when he worked for Barclays. But he was one of the banking fat cats, and he's taken his millions and he's invested it in horseflesh. And what he has done and what he is doing is incredibly destructive. I am very anti-Rich Ritchie and his policies. It is incredibly destructive to racing because he's pricing lesser owners out of the market. They cannot possibly compete with the amount of money that he's prepared to spend on the best of the animals. So therefore, he ends up with the lion's share, the best stock in racing, and with very few examples, there are very few thistle cracks around the place to keep small owners and small trainers in business, or Kerry Lee or these sort of trainers working as hard as they can. They get very little good product. Rich Ritchie has all the good product, and he utterly refuses to square off his stars at the correct trip, grade. Like, for example, we'll never see Forheen race against Annie Power. We will never see that happen in racing. And it is exactly the same. For those of you who think that he's some kind of a hero, Mullins are all heroes for adopting such policies, I say to you this: it is exactly the same as saying Manchester United must play Scunthorpe every week and never have to play against Liverpool. It is exactly the same scenario. Willie Mullins presents Rich Ritchie as many gongs as he can, including sending his horses several grades down in ability just to collect a gong. Vautour last year, slated for the Gold Cup, stuck into the Ryanair. A cynical move. Of course he was likely to win the Ryanair. It was odds on chance then by moving him into the Ryanair, but it was just so Rich Ritchie could have one more step up to the podium. Rich Ritchie's all about self-promotion. He's all about self-promotion. Him, the leading owner in National Hunt Racing. Consider this: the leading owner in National Hunt Racing for years was J.P. McManus, and J.P. McManus is famous for racing his horses against each other. You could see 5, 6, 7 J.P. McManus horses in the Grand National. He never denied the sport the opportunity for his stars to race against each other. Rich Ritchie, you are not good for racing, you're destructive, you are weak. You should be having your horses out running for the general public to entertain them. You've got the money. We gave you the money, Rich. You should give us these stars racing against each other. That's what we want to see, and you should afford racing that luxury.